In 2019, a woman was walking down a dark country road when she spotted something hiding in the bushes. All she could see was a dark silhouette, but she could hear its heavy breathing from several feet away. She froze in fear, and before she could turn around and run, the silhouette pounced out of the bushes and started wriggling and rolling around on the ground, seeming to speak in tongues. As she looked closer, she realized it was a man in a skin-tight, rubbery black suit with white crosses over his eyes. A strange, strong musk emanated from the man, seeming to finally awaken her from her trance, and she turned around and sprinted away. This was one of the first cases of what would come to be known as the Somerset Gimp. All across the UK, reports began spreading of a man in a gimp suit jumping out in front of cars on isolated roads and rolling around on the ground. Although he never seemed eager to hurt anyone, the police began an intense search to find the person or people behind the strange incidents, and after a few years of continued reports, the police finally found a suspect. He was a self-employed gardener named Joshua Hunt, and after several masks, women's tights, white paint, and gloves were found in his van, he was successfully linked to 25 individual incidents.
This horrific murder will put you off ever buying off Facebook Marketplace again. Denise Williams was a 54-year-old mother of 2 from Pennsylvania. She worked as a nurse and lived in Hornerstown. It was April 2021 and she needed to buy a fridge for her boyfriend. As many people frequently do, she looked on Facebook Marketplace to try and get one secondhand. She had no idea it would cost her her life. She found the fridge that she wanted and contacted the seller, who was Joshua Gorgon, who was 26. After travelling to his house to pick up the fridge, she never made it back. Now, her family's quick thinking at this point undoubtedly played a massive part in the investigation. They reported her missing to police and provided them with the details of the Facebook seller post. Police were able to hunt down the seller's address and turn up. There they found a hideous crime scene. Several knives were found, and it transpired that Denise had been stabbed to death. Her car was discovered in a car park of a Richland Township shopping centre 4 blocks away. Fresh blood was found on the driver's side door. Tragically, Denise's brother Bobby Williams Jr. had actually been shot and killed in 2013 in an unrelated incident. Her family now had to grieve another homicide. It's believed that Denise and Joshua had had a disagreement about the price of the fridge. Things had clearly escalated horrendously. Joshua had stabbed the nurse multiple times before moving her car and phone from the scene in an attempt to throw police off the scent. Investigators stated it was clear that Denise had put up a massive fight to try and defend herself. He was given life plus 24 years in prison. This terrifying murder remains unsolved to this day. Rachel Anthony was 50 years old. She worked at Ultimate Liquors in Pine River, Minnesota. She was a mum of 3 and was described as a hard worker with a magnetic personality. On the 27th of February 2001, Rachel was working a late shift on her own. She usually followed the same kind of routine. She would exit through the front door to start her car up. She would go back inside and then lock the door behind her. She'd take the rubbish out to the bin at the back, locking the back door and leaving for the last time out of the front. Now, alarm bells started ringing when Rachel's car was found abandoned by a police officer. Her bag, coat and cigarettes were all inside. The car was unlocked and it appeared that she had left her car in a hurry. It was incredibly odd though for Rachel to just leave her children without saying anything. Although the store that she worked at had got security cameras, interestingly they weren't working that night. There was an initial search for Rachel, but it turned up absolutely nothing. That was until a group of teenagers made a horrifying discovery 6 weeks later. It was the 13th of April and her body was found in a ravine by Breezy Point. She'd been strangled to death. Her case was broadcast on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, but that still failed to pull in any leads. It's now been over 2 decades and Rachel's killer is still walking free.
You've seen his face all over social media. You've probably heard what he did. If you haven't, he's a monster. I don't know what planet people like him come from, but it's a terrifying one. Wade Wilson and what he did in Cape Coral, Florida in 2019. Before I jump into it, I just want to say I'm just a girl. I'm not a lawyer. I was not in the courtroom. The trial took place just last month, so all this information is pretty new. I was just up last night, probably way too late after I saw his name in my comments. I had to try and put a story together and get it out for you guys. We're kind of going through this together. If I get anything wrong, don't attack me. Just comment in the comments and we can figure it out together. Wade Wilson was born in 1994. When his biological parents found out they were pregnant, they were only 14 and 15 years old. They quickly realized they were not fit to take care of him, and a family from the mom's church ended up adopting Wade shortly after birth. Wade does not try and contact his biological dad until he's 18 years old, and we'll touch on that later. As a child, he was said to be normal. It wasn't until he was 13 that his character started to change. He became really paranoid, often thought that people were watching him. He was erratic, disruptive, hard to manage. He started getting involved with the wrong things and the wrong people. However, his grades at school were pretty decent, and he was said to be a good athlete. It was as a young adult when he started getting in trouble with the law and was in and out of prison. His adoptive parents did try to get him help, try to get him to see a psychiatrist. However, he was just not cooperative at all, ever. He was only known to slow down and chill out on his behavior when he was forced to, i.e. when law enforcement got involved. Jumping to October 6, 2019, it is a Sunday. Wade Wilson is currently 25 years old and he has a girlfriend named Melissa. That night, they were at a bar. They end up getting in this horrific argument and he storms out, drives off in Melissa's car and just leaves her at the bar. Later that night, Wade Wilson is at a bar and this is when he meets Christine Melton and her best friend Stephanie Johnson. He goes up to them and introduces himself as JR. Christine Melton was only 35 years old. She grew up in Illinois but was now living in Cape Coral, working as a waitress. Christine was described as kind, understanding, incredibly funny, and precious to anyone that knew her. The lady's first impression of Wade was that he was very friendly, very charming. Throughout the night, Wade and Kristen end up getting pretty flirty. They also end up meeting another guy at the bar called Jason. After the bar closes, Jason, Wade, Christine, and Stephanie go to Jason's house and hang out there for a few hours. In the early hours of the next day, so now we are on Monday, October 7th. Wade, Christine, and Stephanie drive to Christine's house in Cape Coral. Around 6 in the morning, Stephanie, Christine's friend, has to leave because she has to get to work. She says bye to Christine, tells her that she loves her and that she will see her tomorrow. Wade and Christine are now left alone in the house, and it's believed that shortly after Stephanie left is when Wade strangled Christine Melton to death. It later comes to light that he tried to wrap up her body in some sheets and put her in the back of her own trunk of her own car, but he was unable to do so because her body had already started to get stiff. He then stole her car and started driving towards Fort Myers. Mind you, this is all still before 8 in the morning. Wade is driving now and he's trying to contact his girlfriend Melissa. He's using Christine's phone to try and call her because he doesn't have his own phone. Melissa's not picking up at first. She doesn't recognize the phone number. Now closer to 9 in the morning, Melissa finally picks up. Wade is psychotic on the phone. He's demanding to know where Melissa is. Melissa doesn't want to see him because she's still mad at him from the night before, but he still has her car, so she agrees to meet up with him in a public place to be safe. Wade shows up to that place in a car that is not Melissa's. It's Christine's car. They get in a horrific argument that escalates so fast. Melissa's asking Wade where her car is, where her keys are. Wade is yelling at Melissa, trying to get her inside of the car. He's pulling onto her dress to the point where the fabric rips. Wade gets out of the car, attacks her, tackles her, punches her, slaps her, chokes her. When Melissa later describes this in court, she says there was nobody behind his eyes anymore. Wade then drags Melissa towards the building, up the stairs, shoves her against the wall, and puts his hand on her neck. Wade then punches her directly to her face, and Melissa remembers nothing but blood spattering everywhere. Melissa's just trying to buy time until the police gets there. She later says that she was convinced that she was going to die that day. She manages to get away from him at just the right second. Wade runs back to the car and drives away. I don't think a time has been confirmed, but it's believed to be somewhere between 9:30 and 11 a.m. Wade Wilson is driving now when he sees Diane Ruiz. He stops her to ask her for directions. Diane was only 43 years old. She was engaged to her fiance Scott, and she was the mother of 2 sons, Brandon, who was 29, and Zane, who was 19. Diane was described as having a bubbly personality, being a loving mother, a hard worker, an extremely wonderful person, and a caring person. Diane was a bartender in Cape Coral, and in 5 years of working there, she had not once missed a shift. The morning of October 7th, 2019, Diane was expected to work a shift with one of her coworkers, Linda. Linda had texted Diane that morning asking if she needed a ride because it was starting to rain. However, Diane said that it was okay, she could walk. Her house was only around a 10 to 15 minute walk from the place that she worked. Diane would never make it to work that morning. She had the unfortunate and horrific luck of crossing paths with Wade Wilson. Wade Wilson pretended to need help with directions to get to his school. He asked Diane to get in the car and show him how to get there. We don't know if Diane got in the car willingly. My guess is that she did not, but eventually she was inside of the vehicle. Wade Wilson then proceeded to strangle Diane until he thought that she was dead. He then drove to an empty parking lot and dragged Diane out of the car, which is when he realized that she was still breathing. Wade then proceeded to run over Diane's body 10 to 20 times. He later says that he did this until her body, quote, looked like spaghetti. It's now around 3 p.m., still the same day. Police are not aware of of the 2 murders yet, but they are aware of the attack on Melissa, so they are looking for Wade. He was found parked at a Joe's Crab Shack, still in Christine's car. In the body cam footage of the cops that drove up to him, you can see the cop try to park to sort of block him in, and he got out of the car, walked up to Wade, and asked him what he was doing there. Wade said that he was waiting for his girlfriend. He looked so uncomfortable, so nervous, and was not cooperating whatsoever. That's a trend that you'll notice. Wade Wilson does not like to cooperate with anyone ever. Wade somehow manages to skirt around the cop car and he drives off. This part was a bit blurry to me. I'm pretty sure that the cop looked at the license plate and that's when they found out that it was Christine Milton's car. When they do, the police get in contact with Christine's friend and they ask her why her car would be in Fort Myers when she lived in Cape Coral. Now that is when the worry starts to set in for Christine's family and friends. Because remember, this is still all within the same day. Cops end up going to Christine's house to check to see if she was okay. They end up having to force their way in, and as soon as they walk in, immediately they see a big something wrapped up in sheets. They lift up the sheet just enough to see Christine's leg, and they can tell that it's her because of her tattoo. It was obvious she was no longer alive. Her face was black and blue, her body was cold to the touch, and all of her fingernails were broken. They immediately backed off and taped off the area as a crime scene. While police are connecting the dots and realizing how terrible this all is, Wade is breaking into a family's home. Luckily, the house that he broke into, that family had left on vacation that same morning. While he was at their house, he was making himself comfortable, eating snacks, having drinks. While he was also at that house is when he contacts and calls his biological father. More on his biological father. Wade Wilson had first reached out to him when he was 18 years old to try and get some sort of relationship. However, it quickly turned into Wade just calling his biological dad when he needed help or he needed money or something that would benefit him. That day when he called his father, he told him that he needed help. He said he did something bad that he couldn't take back. At first, because of the history of their relationship, the dad did not believe anything that Wade Wilson was saying. But the calls continued, and in one of those, Wade Wilson tells his dad everything, confessing to it all. He describes the murders in detail, tells his father that he is a killer, even explaining in so much detail how he ran over Diane so many times to try and get her to look like spaghetti. The way that he was talking about it was almost as if he was bragging. His dad says that his tone of voice was very excited. He was so fired up on the thrill of the kill, and that was very, very clear. It was around 10 p.m. that night when his dad really got concerned that there may be some truth to Wade's stories. The dad was able to get Wade's location by telling him that he was going to help him and call him an Uber. The dad then just turned around and gave that address to the police. The police then contacted the owners of the home, confirmed that Wade Wilson was not supposed to be inside of their home. Proceed to arrest him. Now we're finally on to the next day, October 8th. It's a Tuesday. Diane is still missing. At this point, the cops still don't know that the murder of Christine and the missing case of Diane are linked. There are a lot of searches being done to find Diane. Her purse had been found and taken to the police. Because of that, they suspected foul play. It's not until the next day, October 9th, where the police finally link the disappearance of Diane and the death of Christine. The day after that, October 10th, is when Diane's body is finally found. Her body was found in a field behind Sam's Club. Diane had nearly a dozen rib fractures. November 19th, 2019 is when Wade Wilson is officially charged. He is charged with the first-degree murder of Christine Melton, first-degree murder of Diane Ruiz, grand theft motor vehicle, battery, this is a hard word for me, burglary of a dwelling, and first-degree petty theft. Now, in an interview that Wade Wilson gave detectives days after his arrest, he was showing no remorse, actually ever. He didn't show remorse throughout any of this. He said he's done it once and he would do it again. Blunt force trauma for compliance, strangulation for silence. Also later said that he would have killed Melissa if given the chance. Wade Wilson was given psychological tests, and for at least 2 of them, it was concluded that he was not compliant and that he invalidated the test because he exaggerated his symptoms. I'm not really for sure on this either. It's believed that he had some kind of psychotic disorder. There are talks of his character being a result of some sort of bipolar disorder, possible schizophrenia. Also, while in prison, he later tries to escape. He fails. Another weird thing, at the time of the murders back in 2019, he had tattoos on his neck as well, but he didn't have any of his face tattoos. He got those tattoos while in prison somehow. Another quote that I thought was interesting was from his girlfriend at the time, Melissa. He can absolutely be the sweetest guy that you've ever met in your whole life, but he's also a monster. June 12th, 2024, so last month, 30-year-old Wade Wilson is found guilty on all 6 counts, and he is now facing the death penalty.
This case is my literal Roman Empire. I learned about it last year and I cannot stop thinking about it. Every time I meet a person, I tell them about this case because it's... Okay, so this is about Sabina and Ursula. They're twins. They're from Sweden. Grew up there. Cool. They're super mysterious. No one really knows anything about them. And at the time of this incident, Sabina had a partner and 2 kids and was living in Ireland. Her sister Ursula decided to visit her. Keep in mind, they're twins. Did I mention they're twins? They're twins. During this trip, they decide to take a ferry at the literal crack of dawn without telling anyone. Keep in mind, Sabina has 2 kids and a partner. Without telling anyone, they get on a ferry from Ireland to Liverpool without telling anyone. So they go to the St. Anne police station in Liverpool and they tell the cops, like Sabina tells the cops, yo, my partner is like crazy, you know, like abusive, like please help me, like crazy stuff. So then the police in Liverpool get in touch with the police in Ireland and the Irish police like investigate and they find literally nothing. Like they don't find anything. So after their little trip in Liverpool, they decide to take a freaking bus from Liverpool to London. And still no one knows why they're doing this. They're going to London. No one knows, right? So what they do is they have like these 2 big bags on them. The bags are gigantic. And they're sitting on the bus with the bag on their lap and they will not let anyone touch their bag. Like the bus drivers like put the bag in the back storage place. Like you shouldn't, too big for you to be carrying and having it on you like this. They're acting so bizarrely to the point that the bus driver is concerned, the passengers are concerned. The bus driver is so concerned that he makes like an unscheduled stop. And he's like, okay, give me the bags. I need to check your bags. And the girls are like, no, you're not going to check our bags. You're not going to check our bags. And he's like, if you don't want me to check your bag, get off my bus. So they got off the bus. At this stage, someone at the service station was reviewing, like looking at the CCTV footage and they're like, this is really bizarre. And they call the cops, right? And so the cops come and they talk to the twins and they're like, they're not suspicious. They're not weird. They're fine. They're good to go. After this incident, they go on the M6 motorway. They are walking on the highway, like walking on it. You guys, on. This is the highway. They're walking in the middle of the highway. And this isn't even the crazy bit. So you know how like there's like people watching CCTV footage of highways and they're watching this and they're like, these 2 girls are just walking the highway. They call patrol officers and they're like, hello, there are girlies walking on the highway. Come help. As the patrol officers are coming, Sabina literally jumps into traffic. Yo, she jumps into traffic where cars are literally going 70 miles per hour. She gets hit by a car going 70 miles an hour and she just stands up and walks to the shoulder of the highway after getting hit by a car. She's not limping. She's not in pain. Ouch, no, nothing. At this stage, people are calling the cops because they're like, this girl just got hit by a car going 70 miles an hour and she stands up and starts walking to the shoulder like nothing happened. At this stage, the cops are talking to the patrol officers and some cops are also talking to the twins. Out of nowhere, Ursula, the other twin, jumps into traffic. She jumps into the highway and gets hit by a 40-ton 18-wheeler truck. She gets hit by one of these and not only gets hit by one of these, again, going at 70 miles an hour, her body gets caught like on the wheels and her legs are caught under the wheels. She's dragged by the truck and her legs are flat. You think, yeah, she's knocked out at this point. She's not knocked out. She's spitting at cops. She's hitting cops. She's cussing at cops. She's yelling, screaming. Like nothing happened. Like her legs are trampled, so she's not like running around, but she is like, screaming, yelling at them, fighting them off. Like after she gets hit, her sister Sabina literally, again, for the second time, jumps into traffic. She ends up getting hit by a Volkswagen. Look at the state of this car. This is important. Look at the state of it. The car has like dents on the roof. She gets hit so bad, she flies up in the air and falls down on the ground. She's unconscious for like 15 minutes, give or take. And when she wakes up, she's a little calm until Ursula looks at her and she's like, they're going to take your organs. And she rises. She gets up. And she starts running, and again, runs on the opposite side of the motorway. As she's running, a cop is like trying to stop her. He's like, what are you doing? Stop. She turns around, punches him in the face. And you guys, if there was no footage of this, I watched the footage. If there was no footage, I would not believe this. She punches the cop and runs on the other side of the highway. Thank God no other car hits her, because they're seeing what's happening on the other side of the road, so they slow down. No other car hits her. But the fact that she got hit by a car going 60 an hour, she damaged the windscreen like I showed you guys, and she's still running at full speed. Like, the cops are like, it takes 6 people, first of all, by the way, to restrain her. And one of the cops literally described her having inhumane strength because 6 people had to restrain her. Inhumane strength. So they restrain her, they sedate her, the helicopter comes, takes her sister to a hospital, they take her to a hospital. They get her checked out, Sabina. Ursula, obviously, her injuries are crazy, but Sabina's injuries are, like, they're not that bad. And they take her and everything, and then they put her in a jail cell to wait until she can speak to officers. And then after that, she's let go. She's let go. She's outside a police station looking around confused. And then this guy called Glenn and his friends, they're walking past and they see this girl looking like a lost puppy. So Glenn very kindly tells her, you know, you want to come over? Like, you can stay over. There are no hotels or, like, Airbnbs here, anything you can do, bed and breakfasts. Come over and stay over. She ends up unaliving. Keep in mind, Ursula, her sister who got hit by a truck, is in the hospital at this minute. She's just roaming around. Cops let her roam around after this whole ordeal. She unalives Glenn. Like, she stays with him for a couple of hours. She unalives him, runs out with a hammer. As she's running, she just stops, sits on a curb somewhere, takes the hammer and hits herself on the head over and over and over again. And this poor guy called Joshua, he sees this happening and he's like, what the so he gets out of the car and he tries to stop her. Girlie pulls the weapon out of her pocket, hits him over the back of the head, starts running towards a bridge. This bridge is like 30 foot up and then there's a highway under. This girl gets to the bridge, jumps into the highway, the bridge under it, she jumps into the highway and she's somehow still alive. She got hit by 2 cars, hits herself on the head with a hammer. Her head is filled and she jumps 30 feet up and she's still fine. She's alive. No one knows anything about Ursula, the other sister. So Ursula literally got let go from the hospital and she freaking went to Sweden for a little bit and like joined a church in like Washington or something. Her sister Sabine, like literally the prosecutors and like the other side, I don't know what you call them, I forgot. They literally they were like, she's like, we can't charge her with anything because like there's something genuinely wrong. And by the way, they tested both the girlies for drugs because the cops were convinced they were on drugs. They were on no drugs. It was just them. Well, it wasn't just them. I'll explain in a bit. So because they were convinced that there was something psychologically wrong with Sabina, she only served 5 years. And what they think was happening was a case of folie à deux, which folie à deux is basically like, usually happens to family members and it translates to madness of 2. So like, if, you know, a delusion that another person has, if it's a twin especially or a family member, can be transferred to you. You can see the same hallucinations and have the same delusions as them. So they're convinced that that's what happened. But I'm not convinced by this. Like, this is way too bonkers for it to just be a case of folie à deux. Like, can I just state that these girlies are so mysterious? No one knows anything about them before that incident or after the incident. We just know about the incident itself. It's like they disappeared off the face of the earth. And by the way, you know the bags that they were like clenching to and they wouldn't let anyone touch? There was nothing suspicious in them. It was just like a bunch of phones and like one ID for one of the twins, but not the other. So like, no one knows why they were acting like this with the bag, even though there was nothing suspicious in it. I literally think about this all the time and I talk about it all the time because how do you get hit by a truck, like an 18-ton, 40-ton truck, and you're just like cussing at cops and like smacking them and clawing at them? How do you get hit by 2 cars on a highway, jump off a bridge, hit yourself in the head with a hammer, and you still survive that? I'm not convinced of the folie à deux thing. I think something have had to, something.
The teacher that married her 2nd grade student. Mary Kay Letourneau was a married mother of 4 when she first met Billy Furlow. She was a teacher at Sherwood Elementary School and Billy was an 8-year-old in her 2nd grade class. All of Mary Kay's students loved her because she was pretty and sweet and blonde. Mary Kay said that since the moment she met Billy, remember when he was only 8 years old, she knew that he was special and that they kept in contact over the years. Then in 1995, Billy was Mary Kay's student once again. Mrs. Letourneau was 34 years old now and teaching 6th grade. Billy was 12 years old now and in her 6th grade class. Something that I don't think is brought up enough is that Billy was only a year older than Mary Kay's oldest son. Billy was Mary Kay's favorite student. She would invite him over all the time throughout the school year to hang out with her family and play with her kids. They were spending a lot of time together, and Billy was developing quite a serious crush on his teacher. Mary Kay would say that he came on to her first and was pursuing her very hard. But I need to make something very, very clear, and I cannot stress this enough. It is normal for a child to have a crush on their teacher. It is not normal, and it's disgusting for those feelings to be reciprocated. And as the adult in the situation, Mary Kay should have known what was appropriate and put an end to it. But just to further prove how much of a 12-year-old boy Billy was at this point, he had a $20 bet with another student that he could make Mrs. Letourneau sleep with him. And when 6th grade let out for the summer, Mary Kay started statutory essaying Billy. And by the end of summer, Mary Kay was pregnant with Billy's child. I just cannot stress this enough to you guys. She's almost 35 and he is 12 years old. And that she's married already with 4 kids, one of whom is extremely close in age to Billy. Well, Mary Kay's husband finds out about what's happening, and one of his relatives actually called and reported the abuse, and Mary Kay was arrested for the first time. Mary Kay, who is very pregnant by now, said that she didn't know that what she was doing was a felony. And Billy continued to support her throughout the entire trial. He said that he was not a victim, what they did was completely consensual, and that they were in love. Mary Kay's husband was awarded a divorce and also full custody of their children, and I don't know if she ever saw her first 4 children ever again. Mary Kay gave birth to her and Billy's first daughter while awaiting sentencing and was sentenced to about 80 days in prison. Following Mary Kay's release, she was given a no-contact order, so she was unable to have any contact of any minor, which included all of her children and Billy. But of course, she quickly broke that no contact order. Her and Billy started seeing each other pretty much almost immediately, but they were quickly caught and she was arrested again. This time she was put on the registered SA offender list. But by the time that she was caught, she was already pregnant with Billy's 2nd child. This time around, she was sentenced to over 7 years in prison and gave birth to her and Billy's 2nd daughter while in jail. Both of those babies were put in the custody of Billy's mom, by the way. By the time that Mary Kay was released the 2nd time, Billy was 21 years old and he filed to have the no contact order overturned, which was granted by a judge. So him and Mary Kay got married then. He was 22 years old and Mary Kay was 43. They were married for about 12 years before Billy filed for a legal separation, but the two were never able to actually get legally divorced because Mary Kay got really sick and ended up passing away in 2020 at the age of 58 years old. Since Mary Kay's passing, Billy has done a lot of TV interviews and it seems like he's finally come to terms with the fact that he was a victim. He says quite often that if he was attracted to a 12-year-old while he was in his 30s, he would seek professional help and that would be extremely disturbing. He also says that if either of his daughters ever said that they were dating their teacher, that he would report it and it would be gross. I really feel for Billy. I mean, Mary Kay, through the abuse, ruined his teenage years, his 20s, his 30s, really all the best years of his life. I mean, he was a father 2 times over by the age of 14. That is some serious trauma, and I hope he has a lot of support. As for Mary Kay, I think that she is a narcissist who became fixated on a victim and refused to let go. It also seems like she convinced herself that the two were star-crossed lovers and that she was doing nothing wrong. She actually never ever admitted to doing anything wrong because they were in love. Up until the day she died, she put all the blame on Billy, who, remember, was only 8 years old by the time they met. And she honestly had a lot of supporters who believed her when she said that the two were soulmates, which is so freaky and disgusting. And you know, if the genders were reversed, it would be a completely different story.
From happy marriage to horror, this case proves you have absolutely no idea who you're married to. Gary Baird and his wife Susan lived on Windermere Road in Belfast. They'd been married for around 40 years and had 4 children together. From the outside they looked like a normal couple, but things would end in tragedy on the 16th of August 2020. The couple were no stranger to tough times. They'd even looked at divorcing in 2017 and experienced financial strain and bereavement together. However, they never went ahead with separating, and if they had, this story may end completely differently. Gary actually lost his mum and really struggled with this, and also really struggled apparently throughout lockdown with mental health issues. The couple got counselling though and had appeared to turn a corner. However, it's reported that Gary started hearing voices in his head in June 2020. On the 6th of August that year, Gary was involved in a really serious incident involving a bin lorry. He'd had some of his fingers amputated and had to be hospitalised. Now, it's not confirmed, but it's speculated that this may have been an attempt to self-unalive. Susan was reportedly really dreading him being discharged from hospital, and she was right to be concerned. On the 16th of August, Gary attacked Susan in their own home with a hammer. She suffered what coroners stated were catastrophic head injuries and had absolutely no chance of survival. After the brutal attack, Gary was detained in a mental health facility. It was later revealed that he'd made over 570 calls to a doctor to try and get help for mental health issues. He'd also been prescribed medication, but we don't know whether he had or hadn't been taking this correctly. The now 65-year-old man has been sentenced to 7 years for manslaughter with diminished responsibility.